Welcome to this week's episode of the Digital Diaries. Today I'm sitting down with someone who's had a profound impact on my own professional journey, Aisling O'Connor, founder and CEO of SkillTribe.io. Aisling helps tech and SaaS professionals not just land jobs, but the right roles that truly align with who they are. Before launching SkillTribe, she walked the walk, starting her career as an SDR in Dropbox, moving up to Enterprise AE and BDR manager in Zendesk. So she knows firsthand what it takes in terms of the highs and lows working in fast-paced tech sales. She brings a mix of practical wisdom, deep empathy, and fierce encouragement in everything she does. And for me personally, I've known that she's helped raise my personal confidence and truly believe in myself to get to the next stage of my career. And we're delighted to have her on the Digital Diaries. Aisling, a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Peter, and thank you for such an amazing introduction.
My pleasure. It is genuinely an honor to have you here. And, I will start by saying I never give recommendations to anyone on anything, be it a restaurant, a movie, but I have referred people to you. And because working with you was genuinely such a pleasure and it really, really helped me get to the next stage. But if we may, I'd love to jump right in. STR to AE to founder. As Ronan Keating would say, life's a roller coaster. Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way, Peter. I feel
Yeah.
like there's life, you only get one shot at it, and I feel
Hmm.
like for me, I always wanted to shoot that shot. Like I always wanted to go big or go
Hmm.
home.
Yep.
I'm the kind of person I would rather live my life and have no regrets than play it safe. And so for me, I saw tech sales as that opportunity to have a ridiculously good life very early on in my career, as long
Mhm.
as I did my part right and I was able to work hard, get results. I saw tech sales as one of those unique industries that doesn't care as much about what age you are, how qualified you are, what gender you are, blah, blah, blah. If you can bring in results, you will be rewarded. So
Yep.
that's basically what got me on this journey and what kept me here as well.
And look, I mean, that is so totally true. And one of the things all the tech companies are genuinely pretty good at is constant enablement and training, be it product, be it skill set. So I always feel you stay relevant. Having said that, I know firsthand, and I'm sure you have a story here for me. It's never straightforward, and there are always the days when you question going, God, am I able for this? Tell us about one of the more challenging setbacks you had in your career at some point.
Honestly, Peter, like in the moment, it feels like everything's crashing in on you and this is the end. And you're like, where is the escape exit? For example, 6 months into my SaaS sales career, I went to my manager and I told him, look, I'm going to save you this difficult conversation. I hate rejection, so I'm going to reject myself. I understand that you want to fire me. And he was like, girl, you are overthinking this so much. I'd come to that point because 6 months in, I was at the bottom of the barrel. I like
Hmm.
the dashboard is red. I thought I was doing everything right. I was making the calls. I was following the process. I was drinking the Kool-Aid, but the results weren't showing. And so I really felt it's a me problem. I just can't sell.
Hmm.
And clearly, this is something that isn't going to change. That's what I thought 6 months in.
Yeah.
And that's what led me to making that bold move of basically being like, I'm going to fire myself so you don't have to, because that's how much I didn't want to be put on a pip.
Yeah.
And that's just the beginning of it, Peter. But what I found is that every time I had a serious low in my career, I had a serious peak after.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've experienced that.
Yeah. 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 Totally. It really is one of those things. And, you get kind of the setback. And I remember going for a role internally one time and I was one of a large group and there was one role and I got the role and it was so sweet. I totally take your point that was in a moment sweet, but I take your point that in sales, we constantly face rejection and we never truly know what's going on in a customer's mind. So we can think of it. And one of the most misguided things I often see is the term mutual close plan. Because unless the customer has actually, and I won't just say agreed on a call, but written back in an email or on Slack and said, actually, yeah, I'm agreeing to these steps and timelines. And if actually they change, I'll let you know. Unless you kind of have some written documentation of that, it's not a mutual close plan, it's what you're hoping to do. And that's where you kind of set yourself up for failure. And it really is about having that very, very difficult conversation in the outset and going, I'm going to do this. And you have to tightrope it because you might not be the term decision maker is a bit of a gray area because often people spread that decision out. Even the person who's signing it wants somebody else's input, their team, they want to make sure everyone's on board, that it'll be a success if they do it. So you have to really be sensitive in terms of how you ask that question.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. It is like, you could be like, I once had a zero quarter. And the reason I had the zero quarter is it was pipeline was really, really tight. And I put all my energy into a big deal, which is a question mark that everyone probably shouldn't do. And I definitely shouldn't if I had a zero quarter. However, it was an internal problem with information security pack. But then, like my Q2, I was way ahead by the third week into Q2. So it balanced out pretty quickly, and I was given a bit of grace because it should have closed in Q1. Like it was a thing that stalled it in Q2, but it gave me the breathing space going into Q2 then that I could continue on working. But
Yeah.
tell us about some of the highs, because look, we all look at the lows, but what's the moment that kind of, when you did have that high that made you go, I'm so glad I stuck at this and this is why I do this job?
Well, to be honest, Peter, I feel it just suits some personalities. I
Mm-hmm.
think if you're the kind of person that, I know this might seem like a cliche, but like sales can make you feel alive because the lows are so damn low, but the highs are so high. And for me, I knew I could get a more stable job if I wanted a career that was about like stability and consistency,
Mm-hmm.
where, regardless really of how hard you worked, everyone got the same promotions, everyone got the same pay. I was never about that life. I've
Yeah.
always liked that whole, the rush of, you know, there's all these unknowns, there's so many things I can't control, there's going to be highs and lows, but I feel alive and I feel like it tests and develops you as a person. And
Mm-hmm.
that for me is something that like is beyond just worth the paycheck that you get with it. It's like you're feeling like you have to develop as a person because on a daily basis you're being challenged.
Mm-hmm.
So the highs I think are that much sweeter because of
Mm-hmm.
the lows.
Yeah.
When you finally had that Q2, I'm sure you were like ridiculously happy also because you had that really tough quarter where people start doubting you. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the funny things, and I will answer your question, but one of the funny things that I noticed in sales, I don't know if you've had this experience, when your number's at the top of the dashboard and you're, trending towards President's Club and you're doing really well, when there are conversations around a team table and leadership are there or whoever is important at the time, they really listen to your opinion. They're
Yeah.
leaning in. Everyone's agreeing with you. Oh, that's a great idea, Ashling. I was thinking
Yeah.
the same. The minute the next quarter comes in, you're back at the bottom. People are interrupting you. They're talking
Yeah.
over you. You're not even invited to the meeting. And you get to a point where you're like, this is actually hilarious. I can't take this personally. The highs are not fully a reflection on me, and neither are the lows. There are
Yeah.
so many factors at play. My job is to be like a surfer, surfing the waves as much as
Yeah.
possible, and trying to find a way to take advantage of whatever cards I've been dealt in this moment. And sometimes taking advantage is simply being like, what can I learn from this to
Mm-hmm.
make me better? Versus like, sometimes you're not going to hit. That's just a fact. But I find that there's always a gift, as I said, with the lows who brought me the highs. Do you want me to answer the second part of the question, or do you?
Yeah, please do. Please keep going. Yeah.
So back to that Dropbox moment, that was what happened in my first 6 months. I knew probation was coming up and I was like, I'm not going to get past probation here. Sales is ruthless. You're not bringing in the
Mm-hmm.
number. You're not, you don't have a job. So when I said that to my manager, he was like to me, Ashling, you clearly are hardworking. You're clearly ambitious. I do think you have potential. I think your biggest problem is your strategy. He was like, walk me through your strategy. And as I was telling him what I was doing, he was constantly picking holes, being like, but have you done this? Have you done that? And I realized actually, I thought I was following the process, but I
Mm-hmm.
was just skimming the surface. And so I was like a busy fool.
Yeah.
And so what happened then is he thankfully, like thank you to all the amazing sales managers out there, because like you've probably had them as well. When you're in a low moment and someone believes in you more than you believe in yourself, they are the people who get you to that next phase, and you'll forever be grateful to those people. That's what this guy was for me. He
Hmm.
took me under his wing and he was like, let's work on this process. And then for the next couple of weeks, like, honestly, it felt like I was in, the army. It was like boot camp. He was forcing me to do stuff I felt was so uncomfortable, really something I never would have expected, in terms of like how far I had to go with questions, with
Yeah.
my research, with my strategy, with who I had to speak to. But the funny side is that after that period, and then that was Q4, so at the time Dropbox let a lot of people go. There was huge mass redundancies, and the
Okay.
entire enterprise team was let go. They went into the office, they took their coats and hats, and they were asked to leave, and that was the end of it. And because of that, I was basically given an opportunity to work my AE's patch, because there was no AE anymore and there
Yeah.
was no closed deals. And that quarter, after 6 months of hell, Q3 had been pretty good. Q4, there's no AEs left in the building. I'm technically an SDR. I take over the enterprise AE patch. Every other SDR is like freaking out because there were redundancies for us too. I went to town, Peter. I was like, this is my moment. And I closed every single deal. So I hit 362%, something like that. It
Yeah.
was 360
Nice.
something. I was a top performer in all of EMEA. I was so confident after that that I then went for an internal full enterprise AE role, even though I'd been an SDR 2 weeks before. You know what I mean? That's an example of the highs that you get in sales if you can
Yeah.
just get past that low moment and ideally have somebody to help you out. Like, I would not be where I am today if I hadn't had that manager who'd done the road that I wanted to go on and who guided me through that moment.
You reminded me of way back when I worked in, I don't mind saying the company was AIB Merchant Services before I was fully in tech and it was payments. And we were inbound and outbound telesales, what they actually called it back then. And I was on the outbound team and I was kind of really struggling to get traction. And sorry, on the inbound team I'd started and I was struggling. And then I went on to the outbound team and things were picking up. And then they made the UK field sales team completely redundant because their processes were all over the place. They were a bit rogue. They were a bit disconnected from us. But as a result, nobody wanted to touch it. And it was like, who's going to? And I said, I will take every one of those. And I remember the entire team laughing at me, going, you're an idiot. You're going to regret that. 10 days later, I had all those accounts closed, bar two, which I closed the following week. And it was like, I just went from bottom to top overnight. And then, like that, it's just people are looking at you going, how did you do that? And I'm like, because I did the thing you didn't want to do. you know?
It's so funny. I do find sales, like as I said back a few minutes ago, like it is fickle in terms of like you go from zero to hero overnight, and you go from no respect in the office, people kind of dismissing
Mhm.
you, to everyone want to know what's your secret, tell me what you're doing. And it's hilarious because you can't take it seriously. Because
There is no secret. Like at the same time, there actually isn't. It's work hard, focus on the customer, know your processes, learn from your mistakes, and execute. Like it's just iterative over and over again. I agree with you. I think the secret thing, I always compare it with healthy living, particularly weight loss. What's your secret? Eat less, exercise more. That's pretty much it. I mean, there's a
how
bit
much are you
more
going
to
to charge for that advice now, Peter?
exactly. I mean, people are charging huge hourly rates for that. But I really wanted to kind of come back to my experience working with you. And, I've sent a couple of people your direction. And actually, one of my colleagues, you introduced me to, and I referred him into where we are now in Revolut. I was out with him recently and we're having a couple of drinks and we're chatting about our experience working with you. And we both
Oh,
really stressed that what we got from you above all else was a rebuilding in confidence. We both felt we'd been managed down and kind of put into a box. How do you, I imagine that's a common problem you come across. How do you identify that and then get someone to believe in themselves? Because that's hugely powerful in what you do.
well, thank you, firstly. I'm going to use your your phrase and say, I don't know, there is no secret, I guess,
Hmm.
but there is a process. So the first thing is, not everybody is going to be a fit for me. Like I'm at a point where I am quite happy to say 99% of people probably won't be a fit for me. There's only 1% that are.
Okay.
But because there's also amazing other people who can help people in their journey and wherever stage they're at. But for me, when I see somebody like you or the colleague that you've mentioned, you would both be classic examples of people who have the right intention,
Hmm.
are hardworking, and are extremely naturally gifted in one or more areas. However, the environment that you've been put in
Hmm.
has led to you feeling lack of confidence, maybe a lack of direction,
Hmm.
maybe feeling like you have things like imposter syndrome and you're not sure where to go.
Yeah.
And that's something I can relate to because, again, as I said, I've gone down this road of sales and I know that, like, when you're feeling low, you can't sell. That's the first thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like impossible. And when you're feeling high, you don't even care. You're like, I'm so sorry that you are not going to get this amazing product. You're like, the deals just come easy. You don't have to try. And so when I meet people like yourself, I think what happens for you, and I'm so glad to hear that you said that the biggest thing was the confidence, is that it's not me being like, Peter, you're amazing.
No.
It's you realizing for yourself what you already knew but forgot. And I think that that comes from when it sounds really basic, but like when we go through the first stage around getting interviews and we start going through your CV, some people say to me, "Hey, Ashling, can I send you my CV and can you please do it for me?" And I'm like, "No, because that's not how you get the magic. The magic
Yeah.
comes from me hearing your story, me asking you questions as you brush over these amazing things you did. Like, wait, hold on a second, Peter. Wait, what did you say?" And then you tell me
I
again. I'm
do
like,
remember that happening.
yeah, because you're just brushing past this incredible information. And what
Yeah.
can happen as well is because you've essentially been trained to think that that you're not special or that you're ordinary, that you should,
Hmm.
reduce your standards. So your brain is almost like it's focused all its attention on all your gaps, your weaknesses, what's not working, and it's forgotten about all this ridiculously good stuff. And so what I just help people to do is to remember who they are.
Hmm.
One thing I'll say is that sometimes people are so in the hole of like it's basically a relationship with themselves where they feel so disenchanted by how they feel about themselves. They don't feel like they're living up to their potential. They don't feel like maybe they feel like they've lost it. All these
Hmm.
self-limiting beliefs creep in. So if someone's at that point and they're extremely low, one question I always ask them is, well, if you don't believe, it's possible right now, do you believe you have potential?
Yeah.
Everyone believes they have potential.
They do. Yeah.
Everybody knows that they have potential. And so what that is just one small step
Hmm.
in that right direction. And then if you keep doing these things where you're seeing the evidence for yourself through the storytelling and through creating a CV, and then you're practicing the interview answers and you're like, whoa, actually, this is not that hard. And you're
Yeah.
seeing what opportunities are on the market. And then you're getting positive feedback from these companies. And it's all coming together. And you're going home and you're telling your partner, actually, I think I've been underselling myself. My biggest problem is I'm underselling myself. You start to realize who you are again. And that's the
Yeah.
fun of it.
Do you know, it really is? And there was one role I didn't get when we were working together, and I remember getting right to the end of the process, and the whole way through, the feedback was rock solid. Like I was just tipped out by someone with a bit more experience, which can happen anywhere, and it's not actually a big deal. But it was shocking to have an incredible recruiting experience and confidence build while not getting a role.
That's it. That's actually amazing
Yeah.
because that's the same skill set. If you can go into sales and not
Hmm.
take it personally when a deal closes or a deal doesn't close because you trust that you still got something from that
Yeah.
and that the right deals will close, then you're invincible. So I love that.
And I remember one key moment in sales for me was when a deal signed and I didn't jump out of my chair. And it was a particularly large deal. And that was the point I knew when what I would say is I've mastered this. So when did you feel that you'd mastered it, and how did that influence your decision to go out into Skill Tribe?
So my relationships with interviews actually go back to me as a child.
Okay.
Yeah. So context on my family. My mum had her own business and my dad worked in a bank and he worked his way up from like bottom HR role through to like head of HR and he used to work with CEOs
Hmm.
and help them during the crash to
Nice.
with their messaging around
Yeah,
what was going to happen to people's jobs and blah blah blah, like very difficult conversations.
completely.
And so my dad was a master at how to handle very difficult conversations. And what my mum was, she was really scrappy and she was
Mm,
really like how to do, that's in a big bank, but how to handle things from the perspective of when you don't have support and you're having difficult conversations about people not paying you,
mhm.
or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that combined was very helpful for me as a child, because my dad, because he had this head of HR role and he became a coach, he
Hmm.
was obsessed with role plays. I swear to God, it was the most
Sunday night in the
amazing thing.
O'Connor household. Who's
Yeah,
going to be the employee and who's going to be the manager?
exactly. And all my friends will still slag me because I do stuff that he does now that I used to find so annoying as a child. But like, I just wanted to be a kid. But he was like, at dinner time, he'd be like, okay, Ashling, so, if I was to ask you now to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how motivated you are to go out and do this thing, what number would you give me? And I'd be like 7. He'd be like, and what would it take to get to an 8? And I'm like, just leave me be.
I need my dinner here, Dad.
Please just leave me be. But he would bring out these handbooks and he would start going through all these interview questions, honestly, only because he loved it so much. And I found
Yeah.
it the most annoying thing ever. However, I was because of my mum as well having her own business, and I saw how difficult it was having your own business. And I saw my dad's safe job and like that paid the bills realistically. My mum's was more like passion, but it was not consistent.
Hmm.
So I was really ambitious as a kid because I had this kind of like feeling inside myself of wanting a business, but
Hmm.
also wanting stability.
Yeah.
So I started doing all sorts of jobs. But the first official job I ever went for, when I say official, I mean legally,
Yeah.
was a job in Tesco
Hmm.
at the deli counter. Now, I was 16 and I was a vegetarian, so I didn't eat any meat. And I also was like the youngest person there, and they had all of these interviews lined up for this job because it paid quite well.
Hmm.
And it was also like double time and triple time coming up to Christmas and all this stuff. It was part time role. And I went in, and this really senior person, or like senior in terms of age, I don't know how senior they were, probably not that senior because they're interviewing me, but they started asking me all these questions. And the woman's jaw dropped, Peter.
Yeah.
He was like, holy guacamole, get
Yeah.
this girl a job right now. She could not believe it. She was like, that's one of the best interviews I've ever had in my life. And then what happened after that, I was like, oh, that was fun. Then I kept doing it because I hated working in a deli. I almost chopped my finger off. I was like working in Christmas. I was crying. I hated all the meat. Didn't work
Yeah.
out for me, but I loved the interview. So then I started doing other interviews. Then I worked in a petrol station and cafe and became a barista, even though not a good, that's not my skill set. Got that job. Then I got into events. Then I got into radio stations, which is extremely hard to get into. If you're in Ireland, like News Talk, 98 FM,
Yeah.
Spin, and I got to drive the cars. Now, there were
Nice.
literally thousands of people going for those jobs. There were so
Yeah.
few of those jobs. I was so good at interviewing that I could get every job. And then I was like, Now, flash forward briefly into SaaS. I had never worked in tech sales and I just finished a master's. And when I interviewed at Dropbox with no tech sales experience, and to be honest, no official, I did have sales experience, but I wouldn't say it was official.
Hmm.
In the interview, they gave me a promotion. And that's when
Nice.
I knew it is worth learning this skill.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, okay, this is a really good skill to have because, and this is being totally honest, Peter, between ourselves and whoever's listening, which is hopefully nobody.
So you're not that far off on the numbers, but go on.
I realized that I was better at interviewing than I ever was at the jobs I did. And that's me being completely honest. So I
Yeah.
got so good at interviewing this game that I could actually get any job I wanted, so long as there was some basic criteria met. And that often didn't mean I was the best person at the job because it's a different skill set.
Yeah.
That's about my background and the story.
And that's a really, really interesting point, because even within sales as a whole, probably my strongest suit is presenting in front of people. But I often need help in the other areas of, like, hang on, have we touched all the business value points that actually make this a compelling argument as to why they should buy? And it is a really, really great point. And then I remember you trying to explain this to me in an interview of, you summed it up really nicely of, there are fundamentally two things an interviewer wants to know. Is this person likable? And can they do the job? And when you say it as simply as that, it says simply, but there's a lot of complexity in terms of how you communicate, particularly the latter, that, yeah, I'm a nice person to work with, but also I can tick all your boxes and make your life easier, which is a very challenging thing to walk, because we can all talk hard skills, but how do we give them the confidence to know that Ashling is going to make this easy? It's a really, really fascinating point. So then,
Mm.
how did that bring into SkillTribe then?
So what happened then was when I became a sales manager,
Mm-hmm.
and by the way, one very brief story of my boldness with interviewing. So
Please keep going. Yeah.
when I was internal at Zendesk, there was a sales enablement role that came up, and they're as rare as hen's teeth. And I felt I was really good at helping other people to be successful. At that stage, I was hitting all my numbers, and people were like, "Oh, you must be so happy." But I didn't feel happy, because I felt happiest when I helped other people to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So this role came up, and I was doing all the right things internally and setting myself up for success. And everyone was bought into me getting the role. Like, they told me up front, this is going to be your job. And when I went into the interviews, there was another person who was based in the US who was, a lot more senior than the people that I had built relationships with, and was basically, to me, an unknown.
Mm-hmm.
I had tried to build a relationship with this person virtually, hadn't worked. And whilst I was in the interview, this person was on their phone, literally like on their phone. And they also arrived 15 minutes late and left early. So clearly not into me.
Yeah.
That person rejected me after the fourth interview. And the person in Ireland who was a fan of me, one of them, brought me out to lunch, which is very kind, to tell me I didn't get the job. And this goes back to the confidence thing. So the woman who's bringing me out for lunch brought me to the Hilton in Charlemont in Dublin. Mm-hmm. And I was eating lunch, and I was like, well, she's not bringing me out to tell me I got the job. I can tell from this vibe.
Yeah.
She's warming up to tell me she's really sorry. And she was like, we all really like you. We think you're great. We think you'd be, the perfect fit. It's just our hands are tied. So-and-so is really senior. They're in the US, and they've just said blanket no to you. And I was just like laughing in my mind, laughing. So I was like, I'm going to get this job. And I was like, really? And what was the reasoning? Okay, yeah, that's totally understandable. And it helped me understand. And I just basically turned it into discovery.
Yeah.
Then went back to my desk after the lovely lunch and wrote an email to everybody in the process, from the recruiter through to, there were 7 interview rounds in total,
Jesus.
through to every single
7 interview
person
for
I
an
met.
internal
For
position.
internal, yeah.
Okay.
Sales movement. They took it seriously.
Yeah.
And in fairness, it is an amazing role, and I think they're right to do that. But yeah, 7 for internal is a lot. And I wrote this email, and in the email I said, I just had the most wonderful lunch with so-and-so. And after that conversation and after our last interview, I'm even more confident that I'm the right person for the job. Here are the 3 reasons why.
Yeah.
And each of those reasons, Peter,
Yeah.
I hit the nail on the head in terms of, here's what you're looking for, point number 1, boom, here's the evidence. Here's what you're looking for, point number 2, boom, here's the evidence. And number 3, I made it impossible. And then I said, really looking forward to the next interview stages. I just pretended I never got rejected. They had to put me back in. 3 rounds later, I got the job. And that person who in the US who didn't believe in me, later on, totally was an ally to me, was so good to me, really helped me. But it was just a case of like, she didn't know me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was too junior.
I think as well, we're all guilty of judgments, and I think we make 13 judgments on a person in 6 seconds anyway. But one thing I'd have to know, the person who took you to the Hilton, how did they react to seeing that email come through?
Honestly, like I live my life secretly always laughing. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to take life too seriously. So if it gave her a bit of a giggle,
Hmm.
that's a good day for me because I'm like, don't worry, it's not on you, it's on me. I would rather you people think I'm crazy, like you said, Peter, people underestimating you, people
Yeah,
thinking you're in any way a threat. I'd rather that we all have a good laugh because I know the truth.
yeah, yeah.
That's all
Exactly.
that matters. But to go back to your question, what happened when I was a sales manager in Zendesk is I was two different sales managers, SDR and then BDR.
Hmm.
At that time of growth in Zendesk, there were literally hundreds and hundreds of interviews that you'd be sitting through because you would sit through your own team, which were constantly getting promoted.
Yeah.
And then you would sit through all the other managers.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So you're
So
probably a good
honestly,
five,
Peter,
6 hours a week.
yes, week on week, week on week. And interviews are quite exhausting, by the way, for the hiring manager.
Yeah.
So, what I realized, especially because I knew most of the people going through the interviews, because most of them were internal, there was also a lot of external people.
Hmm.
I realized that the exact opposite was true, that was true for me. When that was that a lot of people who are exceptionally good at the job
Hmm.
are actually sometimes the worst at performing in the interview.
Hmm.
As I said before, I felt I was much better in the interview than I was in real life, but they had the opposite problem. So I would know these people. I knew they were top performers. I knew they were diligent workers. I knew they were a perfect fit in every way, shape, and form. But when it came to the interview, they didn't know how to answer the questions correctly. They didn't know how to play the game of politics. And they also
Yeah.
didn't know how to do the practical elements like the mock call. And this is still true today, Peter.
Hmm.
I worked with one guy, for example, who was a 4-time President's Club winner. This guy is an absolute hunter through and through. He's a shark. He
Yeah.
is, if you want a new business AE, Jesus, I would hire this guy in a heartbeat. But he couldn't get an offer. He
Really?
couldn't for the life of him. And the reason why is that every time he did the mock call
Yeah.
in these really important interviews, he would do it like he would treat a real customer. Like he would like as if it was a real prospect. And what I had to explain to him is what you do in real life isn't what you're going to do in an interview scenario because what you do in real life, that's what's getting you a closed deal. What you do in an interview is to get you an offer. It's
Yeah.
not it's not
Yeah. The
always
goal is different.
the goal is different. The game is different.
Yeah.
So that's a little background on what I noticed.
That is really fascinating, and I'm working with doing a bit of mentoring using Tangent, and I was talking to a guy who's trying to get an SDR role, and like that, he had interpreted that he was to do a discovery call instead of a cold call as a mock call. So when he started doing it, they were like, "What are you doing?" Luckily, very decent hiring manager said, "Look, you misunderstood it. You seem like a good guy, so we're going to reschedule this. We're going to give you 2 more days to prepare for this." So he's still in process at the moment, but I love that, kind of like your manager in Dropbox, that they were big enough to go, there's something's not right here, but it's not entirely your fault, and we see potential, so we're going to give it. But like that, what was the goal here? The goal was to see, will you actually fearlessly pick up a phone? And for someone like that person, they're only kind of graduate age. As I say, those people have never made a phone call to an unknown number in their life. And it's a different world. And I was explaining to my daughter, no, no, I remember life without a mobile phone. Never mind a smartphone that does everything. I remember life without that. And when she sees the landline in my parents' house, she's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "It's a phone." I was like, "But where's the screen?" I'm like, "Doesn't need a screen."
Yeah.
Different world, different goals. Um, I suppose, look, kind of the reason I bring that up, what advice would you give to someone trying to break into tech, kind of at any stage of career, whether it's a mid-career change or an early person startup? How would you advise them to go about that process?
Well, firstly, there's a guy who does what I do for people who are breaking into tech sales that I would definitely recommend they follow. His name's Owen Murphy. He's really good on TikTok as well.
Hmm.
Sometimes, especially in this market, it's a lot more difficult to get into tech sales than it would have been a couple of years ago. It's in generally, obviously, we all know this. If you're in tech sales, the market is a lot more competitive overall. Some roles are more competitive than others. But the first thing I'd say is you kind of need to know what you don't know.
Hmm.
And when you're coming out of college, or when you're coming from a different industry, you really don't know what you don't know. You don't know what the acronyms mean. You don't know what a cold call means in terms of what the hiring manager is looking for. You don't know what an outbound email should include and what it shouldn't include.
Hmm.
So if you're trying to get into tech sales and you're basically guessing, or
Hmm.
like watching things online and trying to piece it together, it can be done, but it'll just take you a long time. And the chance of you getting into a top company are slim, because back to what you said earlier, like the top tech companies, they invest a lot of money and time
Hmm.
into sales training, and they have certain sales methodologies that they want to see. So even if you're an entry level SDR, they're going to want you to do a mock call because they want evidence that
Hmm.
you can do a call according to how they perceive a good call to be. It's not just picking up the phone and winging it. That's not going to get you an offer. So the first thing I'd say is try, even if you don't have that guy Owen, let's say, if you
Hmm.
know somebody who is, a friend of yours who went into tech sales and they learned the process, I would try and use them as well for advice at each stage, because you don't know what you don't know. The other thing is, I used to work a lot with people who were breaking into tech sales. One of the big things is that people think that they don't have relevant sales experience, but
Hmm.
they actually do. And I have so many wild examples. Just one tiny example. So, one client I worked with, she was coming out of college and she
Hmm.
had technically no real sales experience, which to me is a red flag, because you can't go in, even as an entry level, you can't be an SDR and say to a hiring manager, take a chance on me. I've never sold before, but it sounds pretty interesting and it pays well. So take a chance on me. Not going to happen.
And my mates are going there too.
Exactly. Food is free food. So what we did was similar to what we did with you, Peter, like went through her career history. Now she obviously had a lot, like very little to work with, but she did have part-time jobs. And one of the things that came out, Peter,
Hmm.
was that her family had a string of care homes or nursing homes. Okay? Family business, always a good start. Now, I know with any family business, especially one that requires a lot of staff, that you're probably going to be working on it, when you're a teenager, summers,
Hmm.
whatever. So I started asking her more about that. And as it turns out, she actually had been working on the reception. And
Hmm.
as it turned out, when we went into more detail, she was actually the coordinator between like their version of like vendors. So like hospitals and medical equipment supplies, bookings in of like who's next on the list, and representing the home. And then we kept going. And then I was like, well, how many of these are new relationships and how many of these are existing relationships?
I'm ticking a lot of boxes here as you're telling me this story.
Exactly, Peter. And I was like, and were you able to see, like, did you ever translate that? Like, would there be a monetary? Oh, there was there? And then as we were able to flesh it out, she was like, I'm actually so experienced, I could go straight for BDR. And she ended up getting an SDR role at LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is obviously so hard to get into, especially with no background in sales.
Yeah,
So that just proves that like you probably do have a lot more sales experience. It just not might not be, the classic sales executive in a tech company. But if you try to look for it, you will find it.
I agree, and it's really interesting because one of my most regular listeners is my brother-in-law. My wife was at a house the other day, and it's actually her brother-in-law Rob, and he goes from Dublin to Athlone to commute for work every day, and he will be listening, and he goes,
Hi
I
Rob.
really, yeah, hey Rob. He just said, I really had no idea what Pete did. He goes, I thought he like was golden pages and just going through phone numbers. He goes, he has a really hard job, and he was totally flat out. Like Rob's a scientist, just to be clear, so he's doing a hard job too, but had no perception of the depth of what SaaS sales was or the complexity managing internal external stakeholders. And to that point of that graduate that you mentioned, she really, all that happened there was a lack of self-awareness and distilling her skills, because as you were saying it, you were literally describing the function of an SDR BDR. start to finish. Like I don't think she'll ever realize how important that is until she's about 50 and suddenly goes, wow, that was actually a very important part of my life.
Yes, totally, totally.
Yeah.
And I think like tech companies, the other thing as well is like there's a lot of people who might have been really put into sport. They may have
Mhm.
like been athletes or worked or played at a high level, or maybe they were really good at music, or maybe they were really good at like literally anything. It doesn't really matter. It's about that transferable skill that you focus your attention on a goal. You
Mhm.
overcame multiple obstacles to achieve that goal. You are extremely motivated person, and you're the type of person that's driven by improving themselves and reaching to higher and higher like heights.
Yeah.
That for an entry level role is already enough because it shows the hiring manager who you are as a person. And that's
Mhm.
really what they're looking for. They're looking for that tenacity, that drive, that ability to overcome challenges.
It's so true. And I think as well, when you're in sales, you kind of get beaten down a bit. And I say that as in, it can be demotivating to constantly get no's or no responses is probably the more common thing now. As I say, I'll always leave a voicemail, but I never expect a return call. I use it as a call to action because I don't return calls. Nobody does. But I might listen to the message and do something off the back of it. And so I use it like that. But I was really proud of myself. I'll give a little bit of self boasting. On Sunday, I did the Great Ireland Run. Fastest 5K, fastest 10K, but I was in bits towards the end and I could see the finish line. It was like a mirage at this stage, it was like, is it really there? Crowd started cheering as we were coming in and I just screamed, F this on the top of my voice and powered through and I sprint finished and I always sprint finish a race when I do it, but I was really proud of myself and then I got the video of it. And when you see everyone coming through the finish line in the 10 seconds, everyone else is ambling and then you just see me. Now you can see as I crossed the finish line, I nearly collapsed, but right to the bitter end. It's not the end of quarter until it's gone midnight in the States. That's kind of where I pushed it, and it really gave me a great sense of encouragement on that. You
And
know,
it's funny because I have two coaches, so I really
hmm
believe in the value of coaching.
hmm
And I think everyone should have somebody in their
completely.
corner helping them. One of the things my coach would say about what you did there is like that the most important thing there was actually your relationship with yourself in terms of you said to yourself, this is who I am. By
hmm
you saying F this and I'm sprinting, it wasn't for anybody else. It's really for you because at the end of the day, you're the only person that sees what you do on a daily basis. You're the only person who sees, do you make your bed? Do you not? You're the only person who says, if I'm going to commit to that goal, am I going to achieve it? And we often think, oh, it's really what matters is what other people think of us because that's how we're going to get far in life. But actually, that's not true. Back to my story where I was rejected after 4 rounds,
hmm
I didn't give an F because I
hmm
believed, I knew I was the right person for the job. So the most important person to believe in you is actually you. And you doing that there, that was a moment where you're like, this is who I am.
Yep, completely. It is. Ashling, it's always a pleasure talking to you. But before we finish up, I always like to kind of get a couple of things outside of the professional environment. First off, if you were to give a TED talk on any subject in the world, what would it be?
Oh, I have so many passions.
Yeah, I know.
One of the things that I find so connected is your relationship with yourself and your self
hmm
belief that you started talking about, and how that is also the key to living your best life. For example, what I do with sellers at the beginning is we work backwards. So, what does your dream life look like? What does your dream career look like? And when
hmm
you start with the end in mind, then when you achieve that goal, it's very intentional. You've got the paycheck you wanted, you've got the
hmm
environment you wanted, you've got the job, whatever the company is. So I'm really interested in mindset and how we can get to know ourselves and optimize ourselves to live the best quality of life. Now that happens to be in the realm of career because that's something I feel I'm very good at and have a lot of experience in.
hmm
But there's a wealth of topics that I'd
Yeah.
be interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, I will definitely sign up to see them. Tell us, I get a bit jealous from time to time when I go onto Instagram because it's usually lashing raining in Ireland, but you spend a lot of time in Spain. What's the relationship with Spain? Obviously, I have a deep connection myself, but what brings you there so much?
Canta el país. I just love Spain. I love the vibe. I think Spanish people always say this to me, and I feel the same. They always say, "Oh, I think I feel very connected to Irish people," and I feel very connected to them. I feel Spain is like the Irish, it's like the sunny version of Ireland. Like the
Hmm.
people, so the vibe is great. They don't take themselves too seriously. They're always up for a joke and a laugh. They also, what I think we need to learn from them, they're really good at taking life a little bit slower. They
Hmm.
don't they don't guzzle a beer, they sip a beer at lunchtime that can last, into the afternoon. And so for me, I'm like a bird. I like to migrate.
Hmm.
So when the winter comes in Ireland, I'm migrating over to Spain, where
Yeah.
where the good vibes continue on. And again, that's back to what I said previously about like I figured out what's my dream life, what's my dream career, and I've built that based off that goal that I had in mind, and now I've set myself up to be able to live that dream life. And I can tell you, I'm extremely happy. Definitely not always happy all the time, but
Hmm.
compared to myself in other periods of my life, I can't even compare it.
It's really interesting in 2 points. I will say an observation I made in relation to alcohol consumption, Irish v Spanish. I also really like that they will drink glasses of beer as opposed to pints. And it just makes so much more sense because a pint goes flat in that weather as well. But it can go flat in Ireland as, if
Not
you're
if
not,
you're Irish and you're guzzling it down. It never goes flat.
well, well,
It never
yeah.
takes that long.
Yeah, no, that like I have to say I used to drink 4 pints an hour and not so do these days, but I don't want to do that. But I do feel like as a nation we could really reevaluate our relationship with alcohol. And I do think Spain has got a much better connection to that in terms of drinking it for the enjoyment and taste rather than to escape reality,
Mm,
which ties to your point of happiness. Now, you see, I'd actually take a slightly different word from what you said, and very much what I would call it fulfillment, because nobody's constantly happy. I don't really buy that, but I do believe we're living what I would call purposeful lives with intent and a goal forward. And I mean, I've shared on this podcast, I shared with you before, one of my biggest goals is to be mortgage free by 50, which is alarmingly closer than I care to admit. But I mean, I'm working to achieve the goal. Don't get me wrong, but the time I'm not loving. My son's
yeah,
22 next month, so you can deal with that. But that's my connection to Spain. Having Michael.
yeah. And what you say about the happiness or fulfillment, I actually don't think it takes much in life for us to be happy or to feel fulfilled. Like for me personally, I realized it's not, we often think it's about getting the house or getting the car or
Hmm.
getting the promotion. And it's not. It's more the daily small moments of joy. And that's where I mean that for me, if I can help people to figure out what does their daily moments of joy, their daily commute look like, if they have
Hmm.
one, what kind of job would they be doing, what kind of role, what kind of pay, what kind of work-life balance. And when they then create that daily routine, and also a huge part is the manager, as you know,
Hmm.
because when you have a difficult manager, it's like you're carrying a weight of bricks. Like it's like you feel this weight in your shoulders. And the minute they're gone, you get a good manager, you feel 100 times lighter. But
Hmm.
those little things that may seem, not as interesting to talk about versus like the dream house or the dream
Hmm.
villa in Spain, actually, they're the things that matter.
Hmm. I totally agree, and I was, certainly when I was a bit younger, I was very focused on having a significantly larger car, and I've totally changed my mindset on that. And it's like I view it as a mode of transport. I wanted a tag watch. I might get one in the future, but it's really not the be all and end all for me where it used to be. And I think when you kind of reflect on what it is that you want, you go, do I want this because I want it, or do I want it because I think other people will think it looks cool? And that's kind of the bit of self awareness gets thrown around a lot in our industry. People need to self reflect and go, what do I want? Never mind what Ashling wants or anybody else wants. What do I personally want? And I think that's kind of the key to finding that path and that journey.
100%. And I know it's a cliche, but like, it's a cliche for a reason. We are so trained to focus our attention on the destination.
Yeah.
And the destination is always a second, a minute, an hour, a day at max. Whereas 99% of it is the journey. And that's why if you can set up a life where you're enjoying the journey, where the journey is fun, where you feel supported, where you feel challenged, where you feel you're growing, if that part's working for you, the money will come.
Yeah.
The happiness will come, the partner will come, all those things will come with ease, to be honest. But the main thing to get right is that journey, because that's the thing that's like your life, really. That's
Yeah.
the thing that's every single day, not the
Yeah.
destination.
Aisling, an absolute pleasure. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out?
Follow me on LinkedIn. So my name is Aisling, spelled Ashling. So for all my Irish friends out there, it's not the Aisling one. My parents wanted me to be able to travel when I was older, so they gave me a phonetic spelling. So Aisling O'Connor, and connect me on LinkedIn. I would love to hear where you are in your career. If you're working in tech sales, the people I work with tend to be account executives and sales managers. However, I gave that shout out earlier. If anybody's looking to move into tech sales, I recommend also reaching out to a guy called Owen Murphy, Eoin Murphy, because he's great for your first tech sales role.
Cool. Well, look, we'll put the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. I just want to snap from your headline so as people know how valuable it is. What is the average uplift in salary you've helped people achieve in the last few months?
€104 is the average OTE increase. So that on average is taking them 6 weeks. So I haven't gone into it in this podcast how I achieve those results in the job market. But again, it's going back to playing the game. The job market's changed completely. Is through the roof. There's a lot of AI, auto rejection, recruiters not giving you real feedback. So what I help sellers to do is to have a system, a process that allows them to get the right interviews, convert those interviews into offers, and ultimately to negotiate the best possible salary. And it on average takes 6 weeks. So that's the high level.
Hand, and I think while I did coaching with you, but I also used your offer accelerator package as well to kind of help. And what I've really found, like, and just for listeners' benefit, I'm early 40s. The reality is, when I entered the working world 16, 17 years ago, it is so far removed from what it was then to what it is now. And it was one thing when, you're being headhunted and the market was busier. You're out there looking now, you really, really need help and guidance. And I've seen people who've been really long standing tenures being impacted. And now they're starting to look for a job and they're going, I'll just apply to this. And I'm like, well, you're actually wasting your time. You're not going to hear anything. And they're like, but I have all this experience. I'm like, yeah, so do other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it really is a big challenge. And I just, as I say, I think I've sent 3 or 4 people your way and will
I'm
continue to
so,
do
so
so.
grateful.
And yeah, no, look, I do it because Aisling, your help is just beyond invaluable is not a big enough word for what you've done. And I would definitely recommend anyone listening thinking of a change or moving into tech sales to reach out to yourself around for guidance and direction on where to go.
And just one last point, like for me, it's going back to what I said as well about the journey. Like this is what I do every single day because I absolutely love what I do. And for me, working with people like you, Peter, it's like you think I'm helping you, but really you're helping me. And that, like, I get to live my dream of helping A players to feel good, to get into top companies. It is a privilege. So, anybody that you recommend, I'm like, okay, straight to the VIP section they go.
And I love that note of gratitude. It's a lovely value to kind of finish the note on, finish our conversation. And listen, Aisling, thank you very, very much. We might do a job searching episode. As we know, we keep these raw, as the listeners would know. We discussed on LinkedIn that we would talk about that in more detail. So we might actually do a dedicated episode to that in the future. But thank you so, so much for today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we love having you on.
Thank you so much. It sounds like we're starting the mini series already.
Yeah, we are.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Absolute pleasure. Bye, Aisling.
Bye bye.